This is 92.7 WKRA FM. You're listening to Wisdom's Daughter, and I'm here with my host, your man on the street, James Mack in the building. How you doing, James?
I am on cloud nine, and I've just got back, but I'm here now. Good. How you doing?
I'm having a great day. Listen, we've been having some really great conversations this week
Yes,
about
we
Donald
have.
Trump. Never thought that I would be talking about the man so much, but he just cannot stay out of the news. We talked about the indictment, him being found guilty on the 34
Hmm.
felony charges. We talked
Yeah.
about exactly what those charges were yesterday. And just last night, I actually came across a TikTok video from 2016 of Donald Trump saying that a convicted felon should not be allowed to run for president. I could not
Wait a
believe
minute.
it.
Hold it. Hold it. You. Where did you? How did you get this video? Well, I mean, give me. You really got the video? Okay. He
TikTok.
says it.
Listen, it
Okay.
is going viral. It has resurfaced from 2016 from the election campaign or presidential campaign, and yeah, I have the video. We're actually going to play it.
You
The
have
funny
it.
thing is, I never thought that I would ever agree with Donald Trump, but I have to agree with him on this one. A convicted felon should not be allowed to run for president. So
He didn't say
yeah,
that. Did he say this for real? Really?
he actually said it for real, and I believe we do have the clip. Yes, we've got
I'm
the
waiting.
clip. So yeah, let's go ahead and play it,
I
and
gotta get it.
let's
I
hear
gotta hear
from
this.
Donald Trump himself.
Let's
Government
hear.
to a halt. She shouldn't be allowed to run. If she were to win this election, it would create an unprecedented constitutional crisis. In that situation, we could very well have a sitting president under felony indictment and ultimately a criminal trial. It would grind government to a halt.
There you have it. You heard him. It would grind
Oh,
government to a
to
halt
a halt.
if
Wait a
we
minute. Hold it
were
a second.
to. Do I need to play it
This
again?
guy.
You know what?
No,
I
I
think
mean,
I should
wait a
play
minute.
it
I'm trying to
again.
get over the first one. Yeah, because I mean, if he said that, he's in that position now. Okay, yeah, yeah. One more time for those of us that are in the back. Hit it one more time, just
For
one
those
more
of us, yeah, for those of us just
in the
coming on,
back.
welcome. Yeah,
That that that
let's
fainted in
play
the back.
that.
The
Let's
one that
play
need
that
to be fanned.
one more time. Let's hear it again. One more
Oh
time.
my God.
She shouldn't be allowed to run. If she were to win this election, it would create an unprecedented constitutional crisis. In that situation, we could very well have a sitting president under felony indictment and ultimately a criminal trial.
Wait,
It would grind government to a halt.
Well, he's right about
you
that. It
mean to
has
tell?
not been presidented. We would
Okay,
have a sitting president, right? Because as
a
we know,
sitting
Donald Trump
president.
has all intentions of running. Okay, he's a former president now, a former president and convicted felon should never be
Uh,
in the same sentence.
well, I
it's la-
mean, he's saying neither one of them are president at this time. You're just a candidate. So you're saying that Mrs. Clinton shouldn't even be a candidate considered or anything for this office because it might lead to what if she does or that person does get the criminal trial you already had? Okay, see, okay, why
should
you do
not
that?
be
You did that on
allowed
purpose because you knew I was going to say something. See,
should not be allowed to run and just for clarity, he's referencing Hillary Clinton's emails. He's referencing her emails. And so
yeah,
if you guys remember in 2016, there was the whole issue with the email situation. She kind of mixed up some personal emails and some business emails. And
right.
now I've got one more clip to play for you because Donald Trump
Please
says
do.
something that I've never heard before in my life, but I'm actually going to play a clip for you from that election campaign where Donald Trump says what he wants to say and Hillary Clinton actually responds. It is very interesting. his thought process on how emails go, and I think he
Yes.
confuses, he mentions whitewashing. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and play that clip. I think we've got it. Okay, hang tight, we've got it.
You've already
You
shocked
delete
everybody already.
33,000 emails, and then you acid wash them or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what?
Did you hear what he said? He I don't know if you heard in the beginning, I'll replay it.
A
But
special prosecutor.
no,
Yeah,
he says that she tried to whitewash her emails. Now, I think he's thinking about money, how you kind of whitewash money. Let's hang on a second. Let's try that again. Hang on.
You delete
one more
33,000
time.
emails, and then you acid wash them or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what? People have been, their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done, and it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Secretary Clinton, I want to follow up on that. I'm going to let you talk about email.
Because everything he just said is absolutely false, but I'm not surprised.
Really?
In the first debate,
the audience needs to calm down here.
I told people that it would be impossible to be fact-checking Donald all the time. I'd never get to talk about anything I want to do and how we're going to really make lives better for people. So once again, go to HillaryClinton.com. We have literally Trump. You can fact check him in real time. Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people fact checking. So I expect we'll have millions more fact checking because, you know, it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Wow, because she'd be in jail. How ironic.
He's a hypocrite. You know,
how ironic. He's in jail. Now, the thing is, listen, I got to tell you, the comments on this TikTok were absolutely hilarious, because it was everything from, well, now you're in jail, you know, now you're going to do jail time. And it was also that they didn't know that Donald Trump was a psychic. So apparently Donald Trump is a psychic, because
in reverse, because what happened, it must have reversed on him, because what he is stating, and it took me a while to understand. I think that was one of the debates at the end, that this man literally said this. Now he's you got 34 felony counts that you have been found guilty of, not attempted guilty, not in trial, not in hung jury or anything like that. You actually, sir, have been you're the person, you're the one. Okay, wow. Okay, that's
you know,
interesting.
It's funny, because although at the time he was talking about Hillary Clinton, who knew that it would reverse on him and he would be the one now that is potentially facing jail time. We know that he is set, as it stands today, to be sentenced on July 9th, and you know, July 11th. But yeah, there is a good possibility that he could actually do some real jail time. So I find
this is right at their convention also, you know.
Absolutely. I just find it hilarious that he has stated that he forgot. Apparently Donald Trump has amnesia, that he forgot that out of his own mouth he stated, even though he was talking about Hillary Clinton, he stated that a convicted felon, and rightfully so, should not be allowed to run for president. He said that it would uproot government, it would turn government on its head, all of these things. And so I'm curious to know, once, you know, that this video has been going around, it is viral. I'm curious to know what Donald Trump's response is going to be, and how he's going to try to weasel his way out of this. There are people on TikTok saying that, there are people on TikTok saying that he's going to deny it. There are people saying that he's going to,
it's rigged.
It's rigged. It's rigged. I didn't say it, wasn't me. It's rigged. The system is rigged. I didn't say it. And speaking of comments, let's get to a couple of these comments. So Caitlin MK Barker said, would love to see his followers defend that statement, with 3 laughing, crying face emojis. New York to Maui said he's going to deny he ever said it, even with that video. And then he will say it refers only to Clinton, not him. I have to agree with this one. I think if he was going to try to come up with an argument, he's going to try to say that that was only in reference to Hillary Clinton, that it doesn't apply to him.
Well, it
Just
does. I mean, he said that. Yeah. Yeah.
It does. Just another Gen X says the rules don't pertain to him, just the Democrats. A couple of other comments here that just found his problem is that he doesn't think he did anything wrong. So he thinks he doesn't have felonies. And this is coming from Elaine O'Rourke. And so just very, very interesting comments, some of
Right.
which I do agree with. Kristen said, oh, how the tables turned.
Yes, they are. They're
No, said I
spinning right
thought
now.
they are. No said, I thought a convicted felon couldn't vote. How would one be able to be elected president if he's a convicted felon? And I think that's a great segue into
Yes.
our discussion today, because there's a couple of questions that I think we're going to look to talk through and to answer. So the first question that I'm wondering is, as a felon, what is it that Donald Trump cannot do now that he's a felon? Can he get his rights back? If he were to be elected president, can he pardon himself? Because I wouldn't put it past Trump to try to pardon himself. Can he still vote? These are some of the questions that we're going to be getting into as we go forward in our discussion today. And so, yeah,
Exactly.
let's get right into it. So the first thing that
Well, let's.
go ahead, James.
Mhm. No. I was looking at something. Go ahead.
So
My.
that was No, you're good. That was going to be my first question is, as a felon, what is it that what rights have been taken away as a convicted felon? And, one of the things that I read is that convicted felons in New York State cannot hold most public offices, including elected positions. But the thing is, Trump is no longer a New York resident. And so
So would
I
that
believe he does have.
disqualify him from running, you think?
Well, if I'm correct, I believe that it depends on the state. So, for example, I believe he has residency in Florida
Yes.
now. So, for example, in Florida, convicted felons do lose their civil rights, including the ability to hold office, and they're not allowed to serve on a jury. However, while he can't hold office in Florida or New York State, there's nothing in our Constitution to prevent him from running for president. There's nothing stated explicitly in the Constitution that bars him from running for president. And this is how Donald Trump has been able to get away with a lot of things, because it was unprecedented.
That's
So,
true.
yeah, that was actually surprising. What do you think about that? That
I,
there's nothing in our Constitution that prevents it. A convicted felon
I
can, although they shouldn't, can
yes.
run for president.
Yeah. Well, I think that one, the Constitution, as far as a document and standard for our democracy, may not be perfect, but then I appreciate having it. In saying that, I think that in most states that I know of, eliminating the state of Florida, that if you are a convicted felon, you lose your voting rights. And the loophole is, or maybe there's a loophole there, the federal running for federal office, this person can run for for the office of president, because high crimes and misdemeanors or felony does not eliminate that person from participating in the election process, at least for the federal elections. Like in his state, of course, in other states, if a person loses their voting rights, they cannot be put on the ballot. They're not qualified to be in the political process in those particular states,
Mhm.
because they have their voting rights. Then some states say that you have to complete your probation, your sentence, whatever it is, and after a certain length of time, it would be considered, your voting rights would be considered to be restored to you. You can't carry a gun, and there's some other things that are stipulations that felons cannot do. But this is remarkable at what you pointed out in your presentation, that this man literally said, now if we played this back for him, like you said, he has amnesia, or he'll forget about that. And I think he forget about a lot of stuff that he says, because sometimes it's hot air. That's just me. But then again, these words, your words come back to, as my mother would say, your words will come back to haunt you. And I think that the ghosts are flying around Trump Tower right about now because um, this is something. And I don't know, in different states how they do it, but it's hard for people to get their votings rights back. It's really hard.
Absolutely. And we're actually going to talk about that in a minute if Trump can get any of his rights back. One of our listeners said our forefounders never had in mind that a felon would be a presidential candidate. And another listener said it's so
Yes.
crazy that you can vote. You cannot vote as a felon, but you can run the country. And
It
so
sounds
that is
backwards.
something. It does. It absolutely does, and it's something for our political leaders to take a look at. So let's talk about that. What is there anything that Donald Trump can do to restore his rights? So again, because he was convicted in New York State, we'll talk about New York State law. In New York, a felon can apply for what's called a certificate of good conduct. Now, that would
Hmm.
restore all rights after a certain period of time, as you were saying, James. The charges against Trump are considered Class E felonies, and so for a period of about 3 years is about the waiting period. Now,
Yeah.
Florida requires that convicted felons apply for clemency through a special board. But in the case of out of state convictions like Donald Trump's, it defers to the state where the person was convicted. And so
Right.
if Donald Trump thinks that he's going to apply for clemency and that he's going to call in a favor from one of his friends in the state of Florida, that's not going to work because by law, it's going to
No.
defer back to New York. He would have to wait the 3-year waiting period, and then he can apply for a certificate of good conduct, assuming that he had good conduct. So this is not going to be an easy. It's not
No.
going to be an easy journey for Donald Trump. I don't think it's going to be what it's been for him in the past, with just getting away with whatever, just because it wasn't explicitly stated in the law. So
But do
that's
you think? But do you think that he also will persuade those other states that have strict voting laws that are in place? There are a lot of people that we may be familiar with, wisdom, that have served their time. I know people have served time, men and women, rich and poor, or whatever the case may be, and they're trying to get back into society, and they don't have those freedoms that because of their convictions they will not be able to do certain things. And I was thinking, I said, even from listening to this, will those states go in and try to change their constitutions to suit Mr. Trump? If they do that, I mean, it would really just show, pull the covers off of them. You mean to tell me that you would allow this person with not one felony? Now, if you had one felony, you really in trouble. Okay, this guy has been convicted of 34 criminal felony counts by a jury of his peers. That it was the jury that was picked by his lawyer and the prosecution. And now here you're sitting here, your words are floating in the air. You say you shouldn't even run, you shouldn't even be qualified, you shouldn't even be considered. Yet and still and all in Milwaukee, in the same time frame as his sentencing will be. And I think that that's going to be monumental. Will the Republican Party say, "Hey, we don't care if he shot his uncle, or if he did something wrong? Forgive me for saying, if he harmed someone or whatever the case may be, or unalived someone, that he could not that he could get away with it." The country has some real soul searching to do, and I just think
absolutely.
that we just really need to stay on top of this too. I mean,
You know,
and for the
to go
law.
back to your
Hmm.
to go back to your question in regards to if
Hmm.
other states will make allowances for him, I think it's absolutely possible. There are Trump supporters everywhere, and in government states, we know from the previous election that he did have some states, and so I do believe that there may be some states that will allow him to. Another listener said, "No company in America will allow you to be the CEO of the company, but you can run the country." And so we definitely, as you said, have some soul searching to do. Definitely looks like there are some things to consider
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of our laws. And the thing is, as an after action, there were things that were not explicitly written into the Constitution that I do believe absolutely should
Right.
be included in the Constitution. So let's talk about this. Can Donald Trump still vote? Yes, he can. Trump is a Florida resident, and Florida defers
Yeah.
to New York law on the question of felons voting. New York State allows convicted felons to vote as long as they are not incarcerated. And so we'll just have to wait and see what happens if Donald Trump is going to serve any real jail time. We talked about that yesterday. So those of you who missed the show yesterday, make sure you tune in Monday through Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on 92.7 WKRA. And if you missed the show, you can always catch it on YouTube, either at James Mack, Your Man on the Street, or Wisdom's Daughter. You can find it there. And so we kind of talked about that a little bit in terms of would Trump
Yes.
really serve any real jail time? And I think the consensus is that not likely. We don't know. We'll just have to find out. We know that he is attempting to
Well, no,
appeal.
no, no. I think otherwise. Um, if you look at the trial and you look at what was presented to the jury, wait a minute, to the jury, violated the gag order. He just uh, disrespected the court staff and the courts for doing the things that they do their everyday job, and the disruption that he has caused. He even went to sleep inside the courtroom and just disrespected the whole entire uh, court system and what it stands for.
Unbelievable.
It couldn't be me or you.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it couldn't be. Yeah, it truly is. It couldn't be me or you, because they would. I think we would really pay the penalty for it. I just believe in the notion that there's no one above the law. If we continue even to be suckered in by the lies and the deception of this candidate, and not just because of who he is, it could be Republican or Democrat or whomever, and there's some people on both sides of the aisle that don't need to be in office. It just so happens that this
And
person
he and he's and
can
he's
be.
and he's one of them. One of our listeners
Yes.
reminded us that quite a few
Hmm.
people lost their lives in that
Yes.
January 6th insurrection, that incident
Yes.
that we know that we can kind of almost say that he was almost responsible for.
True.
And so that is something to think about. I don't know if that is something that will be considered, even though that is not a part of this conviction in terms of the
But
felony charges. Those had to
but you have
do,
to look at
with his
when you
business
look at
practices.
that, when you look at it for what it's
Mhm.
worth, wisdom, and what you see today is people have, I don't know, it's really amazing to me that after the events of January 6th, we've never seen anything like this. I didn't see that in the civil rights movement. Dr. King didn't say, we're going to storm the White House, we're going to storm Capitol, we're going to storm this, we're going to do that. And I imagine that if back then, and I know that it's been a while back, if that were to happen, they still would be picking people up off the ground. I think that there was leniency, and I think that the response of the federal government's response on this had a lot to do with Trump also. And we haven't even gotten to that point. We even haven't gotten to Georgia or to Florida, the federal case in Florida. This man had records, and
Absolutely.
he did all kinds of things. And if we allow this to happen, if the federal government, if the government of the United States of America, the judicial branch of government, which these are in the hands of these jurists and those judges and those lawyers that are behind this, that if they allow this man to get away or to be acquitted for this, God help us, because then I thought if he got that same privilege of immunity as Mr. Trump says, I had to have presidential immunity. And if you give this to me, then that means that anybody that sits in that seat is a danger. We cease to be the country that we were founded upon. And I just think that we're up for grabs.
Absolutely. Someone listening said 10 years ago the convicted felon, which is how we can refer to him, the convicted
Hmm.
felon would have been disqualified to run for the highest office
I
in
believe
the
that.
land. And to touch on something that you said, let's just remind everyone. So he for his crime, he was convicted of 34 felony charges for
34.
falsifying business records. Now, that is
Right.
punishable with up to 4 years in prison and a $5,000 fine, I believe, for each count.
Right.
And so these are Class E felonies. It's the lowest level in New York State law. And
Yes.
he's also a first time offender. However, it was stated that they can take into account that Trump has repeatedly violated a gag order. So maybe with
Right.
some of his non-compliance, that might be considered, and he could potentially get jail time. But ultimately, even if he did 1 year in jail, he would not be able to vote. He likely would not be able to. Not likely. He would not be able to run, I imagine, for president from the inside of a jail cell, or even on house arrest, as we talked about yesterday.
And even if he did get house arrest, wisdom, he could not go to he can't do any campaigning. He's confined to the house. I think that us putting aside
unless
jail,
unless
unless what?
unless James, unless they give him special privileges to leave, because he's, when you're on house arrest, they have to allow you to go to school, go to work. There are certain allowances made, so we would just have to see if any of those
Well,
allowances would be made for Donald Trump. Someone listening
within
said
this, with
20.
it, go ahead. 26,
Yeah, someone
25.
listening said that 25 people that worked in his administration have been convicted and jailed. So, in their opinion, he can
Yeah,
get some jail time also. So there are people out in the
yeah,
street who believe that he can and potentially
sure.
will get some jail time. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He
Let me back that up a little bit too, and give you a little bit of history also. We had a vice president under Richard Nixon by the name, he was his first one, by the name of Spiro T. Agnew. You might have heard Archie Bunker or somebody talk about Spiro T. Agnew. And he was Mr. Nixon's
Nope,
first
James, that was
vice.
before my time.
Okay,
That was before my time. But
don't you
I'm
call?
learning
I'm
something
not
here.
old. I'm not old. I just like history. Thank you, but I'll accept that too. And Spiro T. Agnew was governor of Maryland before he became vice president. Before he was the vice presidential pick, and he did a lot of things, even as a county supervisor of some sort. He was in county government or something in one of those counties. I can't, in Prince George's County, one of those counties in Maryland. And they indicted him for the things that he did as governor.
Mm.
He was elected vice president. He had to resign in order to, this was the plea deal that they said, you have to resign, you can't run for anything else anymore, and we'll let you go, and we're not going to put you in prison, but then you're going to be on some strict probation for a few years or whatever. There could be stipulations in the sentencing that in New York City and in New York State, that if this conviction and the judge gives that sentence and say you can't run for public office, or because this was campaign finance violation also, you can't, not in New York, you can't run. I don't know if it could go that strict, but then just as a caveat to history, um, it's not impossible for a sitting chief executive. He was a sitting vice president, one heartbeat away. If Nixon would have died, he would have become president, which leads me to looking at some information. People say, can he be pardoned? No, not if he becomes president, because of the state charges. Am I right about? I think I am right about that. The state's
You're
governor
yeah, you're
or their
you're right
parole
about it.
board or what have you. Yeah, I mean,
Because presidents can issue pardons for people who've committed federal offenses, but this
mhm,
hush money case it is a matter of New York State. So that would
exactly.
be out of Trump's reach, his jurisdiction, if he were to become president again.
Yes,
So we can take that off the table. Those of you who are wondering,
yes.
Trump would not be able to pardon himself. And the same will be true for Trump's cases in Georgia, where he's been accused of criminally conspiring to overturn the Biden
Election.
win, right? The 2020
Yes,
election, right? And
yes,
that case is currently tied up in appeals. But
yes.
in terms of his
I
powers,
think eventually he's going to have to pay for. He's going to have to pay for those acts that he committed there in Georgia. I think you have to
oh
serve a
yeah,
certain.
Georgia's
You
coming for
got to.
him.
Oh man, and you got a RICO charge, and they're trying to get out of it now. Now, yes, I said one nail in the coffin. I didn't say that the coffin is sealed yet, but that's one nail with these 34 convictions. You got a couple of more to go, and I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict it, but he's still in civil court. He still has to pay. Now it's in appeal right now, and they said, and the judge was really lenient about the bond amount of money. He had a fraction of that bond amount of that settlement that he had to put up there, but we didn't look at that either. We don't know what the appeals court is going to do with that decision civilly. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and I think that once this snowball rolls off the hill, that it's going to be an avalanche of legal troubles.
Absolutely. Now, there is a little bit of a loophole in terms of a pardon for Donald Trump. He could potentially be pardoned by New York's governor, Democrat Kathy Hochul, who was it was stated in the news that she praised his conviction. That's the word that was used, not my words.
True.
But so I don't think that although there is a loophole in the sense that the governor of New York could could potentially pardon him, I don't think it's going to come from Kathy Hochul. I just don't think it's going to happen.
No,
But
no way.
but
No,
if it
I
was,
don't
but
think so.
if it was a Republican governor or someone else, that could have been a potential possibility for Donald Trump. Another question is, would Trump get Secret Service protection still if he were given time in prison? And what
Yes.
I've read is that this is coming from the Secret Service Chief of Communications, Anthony. I'm just going to say Anthony G, because you guys know how I am with these names. But he told CNN that after the jury reached a guilty verdict, today's outcome has no bearing on the manner in which the United States Secret Service carries out its protective mission. Our security
Right.
measures will proceed unchanged. So even though if he were to receive
Mm-hmm.
prison time, he would still be entitled to Secret Service, and that's paid for with our tax
Yes.
dollars. So we would be paying for a convicted felon, a prisoner,
Mhm.
to still receive Secret Service benefits. I think that's absolutely
Or they can do, or
insane.
the president, or the president who's in charge of the Secret Service. Uh, I think there has to be maybe an act of Congress to amend the Protections Act that they had when John Kennedy got assassinated, and there was there was a fuss about protection of candidates and people that have left office, because once you had left office before the Protections Act, I don't know when it was implemented, that former presidents and former executives that had those details could not have them anymore. And at one time, President Bill Clinton only limited the lifetime award of protection. He cut it down to 10 years. Well, you get it 10 years after you leave office. The vice president would only have Secret Service for 6 months out of office. But then I think President Obama came in and modified it and changed it to make sure that all sitting all ex-presidents that were living and their spouses would receive protection. But then again, you have the Bureau of Prisons. Maybe they might have to switch them to a federal prison or to a military
Oh,
prison,
definitely.
or
Most
send them to Fort
definitely.
Leavenworth. Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
there's
yeah, I imagine that it's not going to be Mar-a-Lago, but it may be
yes.
something close to it. One of our listeners said if Biden
No, he
wins,
can't.
one of our listeners said if
Mhm.
Biden wins again, they think that he might pardon him, and he may use the reason being to unite the country. So that's always a possibility. I hope that is not necessarily the case. I mean, the man was impeached several times,
Yes.
and that was for good reason. Another listener reminded us that Florida's governor rounded up black ex felons during his
Yes.
reelection and placed
Mhm.
them in custody because they would have been able to vote in that election. The Florida
Yes.
legislature passed a bill that they could vote, and they were put in jail so that those votes would not be counted.
That's the
This
dirty deeds of that place. That's the dirty deeds of Florida, and
that's
you'd
what
be
we could
amazed.
expect.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. The
That's what I
John
think.
Lewis.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, the John Lewis Voter Rights Act that's presently going to be presented in Congress, and it's not being voted on or anything because of the a majority of the House of Representatives is Republican and under Republican Speaker, they would not allow that to go through. And all of it would have given ex felons the opportunity that if you served your time and you satisfied your probation, that you will be able nationally to vote. But there are several laws that are on the books that would prevent even not just saying being a candidate, but actually voting. They take your voting rights away. They leave it up to several uh, uh, the counties within that state, like in Mississippi, the county seat, the person, the county clerk would make that decision whether you get your voting rights back or not. Now, if you got more leaning Democratic counties and more leaning Republican counties, depending on who's that clerk is, that person has an opportunity to purge the voter roll. They can purge you off and keep you off and say, well, you were convicted of this and you were convicted of that. And we just need a national change in the national policy that will give
Absolutely.
people that have served their time. Why continue to even keep that as a barrier? People can't even get jobs these days. There's especially government jobs. You would not be hired
Absolutely.
by the federal government or any state or federal or local entity if you got a felon
Well,
on your
you
back.
absolutely. And speaking of that, we're going to get into it later in the week, but
Yes.
that's a part of Donald Trump's his his plan if he were to serve a
Yes.
separate term in terms of civil servants and those government jobs. He wants to take away those government jobs and to from the people who currently hold them and to give them to his loyalists. So we're going to do a deeper dive into that most likely tomorrow. We'll be talking about what a second term would look like if Donald Trump was to be reelected.
Yes.
And another thing you touched on is in some of these deeds, some of these evil deeds, and I believe that is some of
Right.
what we could potentially expect from a Donald Trump. I don't believe that he's necessarily reformed.
Yes.
But let's get to some more of these questions. So another question would be, can
Yes.
Trump still travel abroad? Can he still use his passport? And according to CNN,
Ah,
his
good
conviction
question.
does not, yeah, his conviction does not automatically prevent him from holding a U.S. passport, but it could make it difficult to
No.
travel to certain countries. There are 38 countries that
Yes.
don't allow felons to enter their borders. And this is according to
Yeah, they're two
World
major ones.
Population Review. Absolutely. And so that list, well, let's see. So some of these countries deny entry to felons up front, while others, they'll do so after the conviction is discovered. And this list
Right.
includes Canada, Mexico, Australia,
Right.
China, and South Africa. So if he
Mexico.
wants to visit
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Mexico,
You
yeah,
mean Mexico where he wants to put the
yes,
wall up and everything? They won't
he
let him in
wanted
there.
to
They won't let him in?
electrify. He wants to
Get out
electrify the
and
wall.
shoot
That's part of
and
his
shoot them
plan.
too.
He wants
And shoot
to,
them
he
too.
exactly. He wants to unalive some people and build a moat, but he would be able
Yeah.
to
Unalive.
potentially visit his BFF in Russia. And so can't go to China,
Uh
but he can definitely visit his BFF Putin in Russia. So that is
yes.
interesting that at that and these are some things that I'm wondering if there are some allowances that will be made for Donald Trump, but I was not aware that they could still hold a passport and travel abroad. Another question was, can Trump still possess a firearm? Federal
No.
laws bar individuals convicted of a felony from possessing a firearm, and most states kind of have those prohibitions. And so there was a case challenging the federal prohibition that's been appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, but the justices have not yet said whether they will hear the challenge. So in New York State, convicted felons can obtain a permit to possess a firearm. It is possible for Trump to at some point later on petition a state judge to have his firearm possession rights restored. Again, these are just some of the things to think about.
Well,
Now, mhm,
yeah. I mean, if you really look at it from a standpoint of who he is, I think that the problem comes in at is that this was the sitting president of the United States, the holder of all of our secrets, the keeper of the democracy, the keeper of our country and our freedoms, the person that swore and took an oath that he would faithfully execute the laws, and he would also protect and defend the Constitution that he quote unquote says that he wants to throw out. I mean, I think that there will be a big problem with that because Congress, I just don't believe that they would let them. Why should we throw out the Constitution to settle or to suit his needs? And another, I was looking at some of the comments, and the comment was made about Mr. Nixon, and they believe that if Ford was not the vice president or was not the person that pardoned him, he would have been convicted. I agree that he would have been convicted of his crimes, and I think that there was an arrangement. If you read the Watergate, Watergate story, and you see how I think it was the Washington Post, Harleman and Elegant. It's another name that that's used. And these reporters went in and they tried to, they got the scoop that Richard Nixon made the pact with Ford and said, you'll be president, but you got to pardon me. I'm leaving out of here at 12 o'clock. Sign this right now before they even do anything. Henry Kissinger, he's dead and gone. He was 100. And they got together and they made sure that they had everything in order to spare Nixon. And it's amazing that these powers are given to the president, and and I believe he can even pardon himself, but not from this crime. See, the state crimes the federal government can't override the state's sovereignty. You can't do it. And I don't know, maybe the federal crimes he could be pardoned from, those with the secret documents and the insurrection. And I hope and pray that these cases continue. That's why I just believe that if he gets back in there, if he gets back in there, it's
he's
something.
he's gonna get impeached again because Georgia is not letting up. These other states are not letting up. And for those of you who are wondering if the gag order is still in effect, yes. Appeals and the sentencing process are ongoing, so the gag order remains in effect. That means every time Donald Trump criticizes a key witness like Michael Cohen, or he, kind of teeter-totters on the line of violating a gag order, that could lead to additional penalties and potentially additional jail time. I want to go ahead and drop the link because we've got a lot of people commenting, a lot of things that are being said in our chat here. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link. So if you would like to call in, if you would like to give us your opinion, you can call in. And you just keep in mind that you will be live on the radio station on 92.7 WKRA. So please, no profanity and just be mindful of your comments and mindful of time. And so, until we get someone coming up, the other question that I wanted to know is why weren't these charges brought years ago? Why did it take 2024 for this man finally to be convicted? And what I learned, which of course we know that the payoff, the hush money payoff to Stormy Daniels by Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's attorney, happened just before the 2016 election. We know that. But the thing is, those payments were not discovered until 2018. Isn't that interesting? 2 years later, the payments were actually discovered. So federal prosecutors, they decided not to pursue charges against Trump related to those payments. And so did a previous Manhattan DA.
And you got to also look at, he was the president. He was in charge of the Justice Department. He was in charge of the Attorney General. He was Attorney General's boss. You don't do that. Hey, look here. So there was some squashing when he got elected. That was his cover. Even who was going to prosecute the boss? In so many words.
But they could have, and in my opinion, they should have. According to CNN, it was seen as a gamble because the current Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, ultimately announced the charges in April of 2023. I just don't understand, why didn't they do this sooner?
Right.
It just seems like the timing is just off.
It is. Once again, as Wisdom reminded you, the link is in the chat. You can come in, and if you have an opinion, you feel free to come in. We'll treat you nice. We give you our word. And I was also admonished that as we continue this part and bring out certain things during the rest of this week. It is real important that we understand and realize that it's not what party you're from, it's not what your opinions are. We have a rule of law, and the law should apply to everybody. And hopefully it will. But the way that it looks, wisdom, it looks like somebody's going to cut him a deal or something. He might not get jail time or whatever the case may be. But I think that a message should be sent to America, letting them know that the Constitution, laws, those that we must abide by, has to be abided by everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we invite you to click on the dial-in link if you would like to tell us what you think, what you have to say, what your opinions are. And for those of you who are wondering what's happening in Georgia, so just there's been a lot going on in the state of Georgia, but the trial really has been delayed by allegations of impropriety against the Fulton
Hmm.
County District Attorney Fani Willis, and that whole debacle with her relationship with the former prosecutor on the case. And so, as a result, a new trial date has not been set, and so it's taking a little bit longer. But be not dismayed. Georgia is going to pursue. Donald Trump's team was able to kind of flip that case on its head to the point where there were many people who
Right.
forgot what that case was actually about. It became all about Fani Willis for a while, when it was
That's
actually
true.
about Donald Trump trying to overturn the overturn and fraud in the Georgia election. And
Well, do
mhm.
you think that Fonnie Willis and her team should be eliminated from prosecuting this case because of maybe a ethical violation of some kind, not a prosecutorial. Uh, Forgive me for those words being missed. I created a new word. The By them being by them being prosecutors and having this case, should they be eliminated because these two had a relationship? Those persons that worked with a person that worked with. I don't know much about the case, so I won't get out there and drag
I
anybody.
don't
But
I
do
don't
you
think
think so?
so. To answer your question, no, I don't think they should be taken off the case. I mean, if Hillary Clinton had her mishap with her personal emails and going back and forth, and she was still allowed to run for president, why would Fani Willis not be allowed? I don't think one thing has to do with the other. I think that
Yeah,
was a distraction that was brought on by Donald Trump's people in an attempt to do exactly what they did. They wanted to derail the case because they were coming up on an election year, and certainly for that, I think there's so much proof there and documentation as to what he actually did. So, although it may not have been ethical, I don't think that that would take away from her ability to ultimately and professionally prosecute the case. So that's just my opinion on it. I'm sure there
yes,
are those who say, that they should not, that because of what
right.
went on, they should be pulled off of the case. I'm in disagreement. It was a bad judgment call, but we've made
Yes,
allowances for other politicians before who've done worse things than that. I mean, we allowed a
yes,
man who openly said on national television that he can grope women in between their legs and get away with it because he's Donald Trump, and he was allowed to run for president, and not just
yes.
allowed to run for president, but he became president. And this is ultimately
The
what
standards have changed.
they
Yeah,
absolutely.
the standards have changed.
What standard, James? We don't have a standard anymore.
Well, don't give up so quick, because I think that even I will be the first one. We're first of all, we're coming up on 50 past the hour. You're listening to WKRA 92.7 on your FM dial as you can receive it. This is your Man on the Street program, and I'm here with my gracious co-host, Wisdom's Daughter. I'm James Mack, and I'm hoping that you have been enjoying this hour that we've been spending with you. We just have an hour. I know it gets good because the hour goes real quick, but we must also save some for tomorrow. But to piggyback on and give you the opportunity, Wisdom, to give our closing summation of what's going on. Do you really do think that, one, you can answer this however you want to answer this. One, that he will be convicted in Georgia. Two, will this case in Florida jump off? And three, with our wonderful person, the wonderful judge up in Washington, D.C., do you think that the insurrection, Smith being in Florida and in D.C.? I'm throwing that
I
at you because you got all the
Sure.
stuff.
Absolutely. Well, in the last 10 minutes that we have, I'll just say very quickly, and then we have someone that wants to come to the stage that will give a quick comment. So I do believe that he's
Okay.
going to be ultimately prosecuted on all those things. It may
Yes.
take some time, but I do believe for the insurrection and for his interference in the Georgia election, absolutely, I do think that he will. And on that note, I'm going to bring up a caller to the stage, and we've got about 10 more minutes on the show.
Oh,
So we're
okay.
just
We
going to
got
ask
time.
you just keep your comment limited to no more than 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, come on up. Who do we have with us today?
Hi, Wisdom. This is I Said What I Said.
Well, hello. I said what I said. Welcome to the show. Tell us your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts are that I feel like that, he asked about, well, I think you asked about why they took so long to bring the case. I think that he wasn't going to bring the case at first. Alvin Bragg wasn't, but because he didn't really have enough evidence. And that's what he said on television, that he didn't have enough evidence to bring the case. However,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. I'm kind of it's not that I am for Trump, but I feel like they brought all of these cases for political reasons. Some of it is
Political
kind of
motivated.
political. He
Mhm.
is guilty, not as far as, well, he's assumed allegedly guilty. He did
Oh, he's
commit a
been
lot of
convicted.
crimes,
Okay.
but I
Mhm.
wish they would have brought
Yeah.
these
He's been
trials
convicted.
before the election happened. And he, remember, if you guys remember correctly, he announced his candidacy real early in the race when no one else was even thinking about running.
Wow.
He did that so that he could try to avoid these trials and to try to deter them. He's done everything that
Mhm.
he could or can to stop the trials. He's tried to put all type of, they filed all type of motions in every trial that he have, because he's trying to push everything off until the election. And
Can I
I
ask
don't.
you a question?
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you this. Based upon what you know right now, would you vote for anybody that had all of this stuff, whether it's Republican or Democrat? I'm not asking you to give your party affiliation. Would you, how do you feel about a person having this kind of baggage, uh, practically a door knock to the White House? He's almost there again.
No, I would definitely wouldn't vote for him with all of everything that he has going on as far as his criminality, because I was the one who made the comment in the chat. No company in America will allow you to run their company if you have a felony on your record. A lot
Right.
of them won't even hire you with a felony on your record, let's alone let you be in charge of it. So no, sir, I definitely wouldn't vote for him with these felonies. And I feel like a lot of Americans feel the same way, that they
Yes.
wouldn't vote for. I
Okay.
feel like Republican and Democrat people that wanted to support him, I feel like they changed their mind once he became a convicted felon.
And you
I
and you
think it
said
changed the
what you
ball
s-
game.
and you said what you said, right?
Yes, sir. I said, and I stand on
And
it.
we really do thank you for coming on. Keep listening. We got some real good stuff coming up. Thank you for calling. I really appreciate it. What you say
Well,
about that, Wisdom? Okay, go
I
ahead. You can
have one
come on,
more
come on, come
question.
on.
Do you remember John Edwards?
Yes.
When he ran,
Yes, I
wasn't
do.
he charged with the same thing? Because they keep saying this is unprecedented and this has never happened. But John Edwards got put out of the race because of some of the same reasons, did he not?
Well,
You have a good point. You have a point.
quickly answering your question on that. John Edwards was the Democratic vice presidential nominee back then, and
Mm.
because John Edwards committed these offenses during the election, and they called it, I think it was some type of election fraud. He was a senator. He was a candidate, and he had to give an account for. He was going through a divorce and some other things, and there was some other stuff that was going on. And also he was in a different position. The reason that I think that we've said that this is unprecedented was a sitting president of the United States of America. He was out of office. He's still recognized as a president, a former president of the United States. No one sitting. Nixon came close. They almost got him. The only one that came close to going to jail or being convicted under these circumstances was Spiro Agnew. And because this high office, this has never happened. Candidates they go to jail and they get indicted, mayors and congressmen and all different kinds, and go to jail. They got several congresspersons that are and senators that are up for trials real soon. And it's just a different dynamic. This guy has the pulse of the nuclear weapons. He has the secrets to our country. Who knows who he has talked to, allegedly talked to, or spread those let them know the information that he has. And he is a national security risk because of his knowledge of the inner workings of the government. So yeah, it's totally different. All right, Wisdom.
Well, thank you so much. I said what I said. We appreciate you coming on and
I
giving us
appreciate you.
your
Thank you for
thoughts.
coming.
We hope that you will join us again. And we want to thank all of those of you who have been listening to the show. We are on Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2
Thank
p.m.
you.
Eastern Standard Time,
Don't
with
forget
your
about
man.
us.
Right, with your man on the street. And just to kind of wrap up, what we've been talking about. And so, we do know that there is a gag order still in place. Trump can still travel abroad. He can still keep his Secret Service, even if he was to be put into prison. And he is still,
Right.
as it stands right now, able to run in this election. And so we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the sentencing. Trump has been very forward with his plans to appeal. And so we want you to join us tomorrow, Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time on 92.7, or you can join us here at Wisdom's Daughter or at James Mack, your man on the street on YouTube. We're going to be talking about what would a second term look like if Donald Trump was to be
Wow.
reelected. That's what we're going to be
I'm
talking
I'm
about
I'm going to be nervous.
on tomorrow. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we kind of touched upon it earlier in the week in our
Uh-huh.
first show. But we'll take a look at what is Donald Trump's plan for his presidency if he were to be reelected. That's what we're
I
going to be
don't.
talking about.
I'm scared to think at this time. I am. I think that's interesting to know. What do you think? I
It's
mean, wow.
It's it's frightening because when we talked about
Yes.
earlier about bombing Mexico and about
Oh man.
shooting immigrants, I mean that wasn't even a joke. This is actually a part of his project plan. It's a 900 plus page document. We will not be reading all
Yes.
900 pages, but we're going to pull out
No.
some of the
No.
highlights because it's important
No.
that you make an informed decision about who you want to vote for. And in doing so, you need to understand what their plan is for this country, and the plan that it seems that Donald Trump and his party have for this
Yes.
country if he was to be reelected has nothing to do with the people and everything to do with Donald Trump. So it's going to be really
Yes.
interesting. We'd love for you guys
And
to
it's
come
going to
back
be,
tomorrow.
and you also going to have some great information also to give to everybody about his position that he's going to take. When he said, I heard some things that he said, Wisdom, and
Mhm.
it's amazing. And I know you got something great for us as far as information on tomorrow.
Absolutely, I do. It's going to be another great show. Again, we hope you guys have enjoyed. You can follow James Mack, your man on the street, on his YouTube channel. You can also follow me at I Am Wisdom's Daughter on YouTube. Our cash apps are there if you would like to do that. And certainly, we want you to tune in again to the radio show. Support 92.7 WKRA FM radio. They play awesome and amazing music. And even if you're not able to catch the show, we invite you to tune in at any time. And if you are interested in becoming a sponsor or running commercials during our show, you can reach us on either one of those YouTube channels for the time being and let us know your information, and we'll get back in contact with you. So yeah, another great show. Very
Yes.
excited for
Wonderful.
tomorrow. Again, we'll be talking about what a second term would look like if
Yes.
Donald Trump was to be re-elected. So thank you guys so much for watching.
And thank you.
Remember, absolutely. James, thank you again for allowing me to come on and to kind of be your co-pilot. I really
Well,
appreciate you.
Well, you do a great job. It seems like you're navigating straight. And as long as we got the ship sailing in the right direction, we're going to be just fine. Hey, everybody, love somebody, be kind to somebody, and always, always be blessed.